Welcome to the Politics Show for Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. Today, the hidden illness. We talk to a West Yorkshire family who say their son died because he was let down by the mental health system. And taking a trip through student land, the residents who say their neighbourhoods are being taken over and ruined. It's an illness that can be invisible and that many people find very difficult to admit to or talk about, though it is extremely common: depression. An even more problematic area is the treatment of children and young people with the illness. Well, one father from West Yorkshire has told the Politics Show that he feels his son was let down by the system. Christopher Blagbrough committed suicide after spending 2 years being treated in a psychiatric hospital. Now it seems that new guidelines are being drawn up to try to help young people like Christopher. Mark Denton has this exclusive report.
Drop round to Jeanette and Peter Blagbrough's house in Halifax and they'll still tell you how proud they are of their son Christopher. A promising apprentice engineer, Christopher gathered a binder full of qualifications, but at 18 he became depressed and was given antidepressant Prozac tablets by his GP. After taking just 2 pills, he violently attacked his father.
I was laid in bed, having a bit of a sleep. My son walked into the bedroom and stuck a knife in my back. I contained the situation. I didn't realise it was my son until I contained the situation. And when I saw the look in his face, it wasn't my son. He was absolutely wild. His eyes, I've never seen anything like it, and I don't want to ever see anything like it again.
Christopher was sectioned under the Mental Health Act and 2 years later committed suicide in a psychiatric hospital. But his family believed those 2 antidepressant tablets accelerated his slide into mental illness.
The only factor that we can cope with is he had 2 Prozac tablets, nothing else. He'd never had them before. He took 2 and the next day he stabbed me. And it went downhill from there.
The makers of Prozac, Eli Lilly, say it's helped tens of millions of people, but should only be prescribed after careful diagnosis. In fact, young people on antidepressants are all around us. Researchers at the British Medical Journal found that 50,000 British children are being given antidepressants. But when teenagers are included, the figures are even larger. Doctors are writing out more than 170,000 prescriptions for antidepressants to patients under 18. Experts are worried.
I think there is evidence, but it's limited, that antidepressants can be an effective treatment for depression in children and young people. But you've got to balance that against risks, and particularly recent evidence that in young people, if you start antidepressants in the first few weeks, they may be at greater risk of restlessness, agitation, increased levels of hostility, and more worryingly, increased levels of thinking about harming themselves and doing things that might be harmful.
But antidepressants have helped Andrew Harrison rebuild his life. A former psychiatric nurse from Lincoln, Andrew's attempted suicide twice. He now takes 3 types of tablets to control his depression.
Without the medications, I don't think I'd be sitting here with you today. I think I would probably be dead, if I was honest. If not, I would be in some sort of hospital ward because I was not able to look after myself properly. So from my point of view, it actually allows me to live some sort of a normal life.
But while GPs are still prescribing antidepressants to young people, the whole issue has become highly political. In the autumn, the National Institute of Health and Clinical Excellence will issue a new set of guidelines. These are expected to say that GPs should only prescribe antidepressants to young people once a trained psychiatrist has been consulted.
My personal opinion is that GPs shouldn't be prescribing drugs like this for children and young people. I think that if a GP is worried enough about a situation to think about prescribing, they should make a referral to their local child and adolescent mental health service and let an expert assessment take place. I think the risks are too great without that specialist assessment.
2 tablets, just 2, and it's destroyed our lives. To be perfectly honest, when I leave this earth, I'll be happy. We've lost him. Sorry.
Peter Blagbrough, obviously that's one family that's been through a dreadful ordeal, but it seems they're not alone. Joining me now is Marjorie Wallace from the mental health charity SANE. Marjorie, Mark's report featured some figures that really concentrate the mind. 50,000 children on medication for depression. It's a lot, isn't it? Is it easy for them to get the treatment that they need, do you think?
Well, no, and I think we've got to put it in perspective, because we do hear the most terrible tragedies, and of course we sympathise with the Blagbrough family. I mean, it's just the most terrible thing. But almost the worst thing that we come across is untreated depression. That's young people who have all the symptoms, they go to the doctor, they get absolutely nothing. They get neither any kind of antidepressant, nor do they get the counselling or the psychological therapies that they may need. And the families are not given the help and support. So I think it's really a combination of things. We've got to look at it. I mean, as was said by Andrew Harrison's case, a lot of people do benefit, and we must not confuse what happens with the young people with adults. Yes, there is evidence that in young people, being on Prozac, but usually for at least 4 to 6 weeks, can increase their suicidal feelings and hostility. But we've also got to remember that 1 in 6 people who have a mental illness like depression, a serious depression, do take their own lives.
What is needed, do you think, then, to improve things, to improve young people's access to alternatives to antidepressants?
Well, I think the first thing is importance, as was said, in fact, by his father, early diagnosis, and by a skilled person, an experienced person. But then, you know, where are we going to find them? We have currently 400 vacancies in consultant psychiatrists at the moment. We have very few specialists in child and adolescent mental health services. And then we have waiting lists. Now, we at SANE Line, we run a helpline, SANE Line. We have 1,000 callers a week. Now, the young people who ring us up, and we've done a survey on this, 86% of people with depression and anxiety say they're getting medication. Only 9% say they get any form of talking therapy or counselling. I mean, they come and talk to our helpline because there's nobody else to talk to. There's a dearth of these psychologists, there's a dearth of experienced psychotherapists, and that's what we need, because if you wait from going to a doctor to seek help, and then you have to wait maybe 6 months or 12 months before you see anybody, well, it's going to be too late.
The new NICE guideline is likely to recommend that GPs alone should not be prescribing antidepressants for young people, and that they should only be prescribed after consultation with a child or young people's psychiatrist. Well, clearly, from what you've just told me, that just isn't going to happen, is it? You must be very concerned.
We're very concerned because of the practicalities of this. But, I mean, we're just going to hope that, that the consultants are going to be made available. I do think there has been too much of a trend to hand out the medication without the backup therapies. But what's really, really important, we don't know the diagnosis in many cases, but if it is serious mental illness, is that the families should be involved in the treatment of that person right from the beginning. And so often we find that they're left out of the loop of information, they're left out in the cold. I don't know what happened in the Blagbrough case, but in many, many of the cases that we come across, the families are not involved enough, and they are the ones who are there day and night with that person. And it's so important that there's a critical period where young people present, and it's often at that time the illness may be the most serious, when they present for help, and if they don't get skilled help, well then they can have long and enduring illness.
But very briefly, is there anything the government can do?
Oh, of course they can. I mean, they can invest many more resources into child and adolescent mental health services, and in fact into adult services. They can improve the numbers of counsellors made available. They can tighten up, as they are indeed trying to tighten up on these NICE guidelines, on the way that prescriptions are given, but without the monitoring, the follow-up often, and the counselling and the therapy that people need. And they can just they said that mental health is a priority alongside cancer and heart disease. But if you talk to so many of the frontline people, the psychiatrists, the people who are there in the front line, they're saying, well, where is all this money? Where is this priority? So that's what we want to see.
Okay. Marjorie Wallace, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.